Good morning class. Welcome again to this lecture. So in the previous lecture we have studied the first practical, that is the introduction to database. Now the second practical is, the title of the second practical is to study basic DDL commands in SQL. Now we already know what do you mean by DDL. DDL means data definition language and SQL stands for structured query language. So in SQL there are different types of commands like DDL, DML, DCL. So DDL is data definition language, DML is data manipulation language, DL is data control language. So we are going to study the data definition language. Now what is the aim of this practical? To study the use, need and also the application of DDL commands. What is the use, what is the need and what are the applications of these DDL commands? Now what are the learning objectives? To know the different uses of DDL commands, to know use and application of DDL commands, and to study DDL commands. That means we must study the different uses of DDL commands, we must study all DDL commands, and we must also know the use and applications. And when we complete this experiment, what you will be able to do? The students will be able to use the commands to define data and tables in a database. The name itself indicates data definition language. Create and define data types for table in a database. You will be able to use the commands to define data and tables in a database. That is, you will be able to define, and then you will be able to create and define data types also for tables in database. So now let us begin the introduction. Data definition language, DDL. It is a language that allows the users to define data and their relationship to other types of data. It is mainly used to create and also to specify the structure of each table, set of associated values with each attribute, integrity constraints, security and authorization. So for security, for authorization, these commands are being used. And what are these commands? To create the database instance, you can use the command create. So it will create a database instance. That means at a particular point of time, if you want to create a table or anything in a database, you can use this command create. To alter the structure of database, you can use the command alter. Now whenever we are talking about the database in DBMS, in relational database, we generally store the information in the form of tables. So when we say database, so we are referring to a table only, which you also called as a relation. So to alter the structure of database, that means a table. To drop the table, to drop database instances. Then to delete tables in database instances. To delete the table. Now deleting the table and dropping the table, these are different parts. So delete the table, that is truncate, and to rename the database instance, that is rename. Now what are the software required? Now this is a practical, this is not a study, we have to perform it. So what are the software required? You have to require just SQL. So you can download MySQL. So it is available, then you can download it, and there are certain requirement for it. We can go for the requirement, like is what is the requirement of the OS and what are the other requirements. Then when you install it, then you can go for this particular queries. I've shared a video of how to download a SQL thing and how to execute that command during the theory part. I have already given you a video. Also, I'll share one more video wherein you can see how the command are being executed actually in the database. So now we will just study. The first command is create. So what does this command is? It is used to create a schema such as database table. It is used to create a database table or a relation. Now what is important is syntax. Syntax means the way in which the program has to be written or the command has to be written. So the command is create database name. So when you see this between the two operators, greater or that operators, so there is certain value which we have to provide. Now the example is create database PRPCM. Now if you type this command create database PRPCM and then semicolon after that, then it will create a database, or it will, if you want to create that table, it will create a table. If you want to create a database, it will create a database where you can create so many number of different commands, so many number of different tables. So one database is created. Now in that database, suppose you want to create one table. So what will be the code? Syntax, it will be like this. You are creating one table, the name of the table, then what is the first column, what is its data type, its size, second column, its data type and size. Now we already know what is the data type. Data type means what, suppose if you want to store a numerical value, suppose you want to store the value 1 to 100 to 20, then it will be stored in an integer format. So integer is a kind of data type. If you want to store the decimal values, then you can go for float. If you want to store the alphabets, you can go for character. If you want to store a combination, then you can go for varchar. So there are different types of database. There are boolean and so many things. We have already seen that. Now we will directly go for this command. So the command is create a table student s_id. Create a table student. So which table you are creating? Create table student. Now in brackets we are going to specify the column. The very first column is s_id and its data type is integer and size is 10. So 10 digit integer you can have as an id of a particular student. So that is one column. Second column is name, and name is varchar 20. Varchar is a data type wherein you can store the name, you can store the alphabetical values, and 20 you have specified the size. Then address varchar 30. Now the sizes that you are providing is the size of those particular integers or the alphabets that are being used in that will come into this thing. So there is one table created. The output will be s_id, name and address, and the name of the table on the top. So one table is created, student, and there you have three columns, that is s_id, name and address. So this was the use of create command. Now second is alter. This query is used to modify the table structure. Now modify the table structure, that means you can change the name of a table or you can change the data type. So the syntax is alter table, then you have to provide the table name and add column underscore name. You can add a column here and you have to provide this data type and size. So example is alter table student. What you are going to do? You are going to alter the table student. That means in the table student you have to make some changes, and what you are going to do? You are going to add MONO integer 20, that is mobile number integer 20. You have to add one more column, and that column is mobile number. It is the data type is integer and the value is 20. So in the previous table student which we have created, we have alter it table. Altered means you can add something, remove something. So you can alter its table, size table, format table, data type and so on. So what you have done here you have added one more column, and that column is mobile number. The data type is integer and the value is 20. Now the output will be like this: s_id, name, address and mobile number. This is for the table student. Now the next query, describe. This query is used to describe the table structure. Again, the kind of table that you have formed, what are the columns in it, what are the attributes, so it will show those things. So it will describe the table. So it is another command that is called as describe. Describe table name. So you say DSC student semicolon. So the output will be look, this is the table student, and in this table student you have this 4 different columns. Now the next query is show. This query is used to show the list of schemas available on the machine, such as database list and table list. So if you used show databases, it will show you all the databases on that particular machine or on that particular server or on that particular system or on that particular laptop or whatever system you are, desktop, laptop or specific server, whatever the system you are using, in that what are the databases there it will show. Then show tables, same way it will show the different tables. Now drop. This query is used to delete the schema like database and table. Drop means you can delete the table. This drop query deletes the complete definition and all its data. It deletes the table completely. That is, if you say drop database and you provide the name of the database such as drop database PRPCM, so it will completely delete that particular database PRPCM, and the syntax will be the name of the command drop database and then database name, or drop table student. So it will drop that particular table student. So these are the DDL commands. Now what are the DDL commands we have seen? There are just 4 to 5 DDL commands. Now we will go for, again let us go through this. These are very simple commands because create, alter, drop and rename. Now again you can use the same command. Suppose if you want to rename a table, then you can use this query, rename table student, and you can provide another name. The name would be this one. So that is one more command. So it is having the same thing. And when you say truncate, to delete tables in a database instance. The truncate command can be a truncate table student, and that particular table contents are being displayed. The table structure will be displayed. That it will delete that particular table, but by the drop it will completely erase everything, alter that and everything. So this is how this particular experiment is being studied. So we have seen the different commands which are the DDL, that is data definition language command. Now there are certain pre-lab and post-lab questions. So here you can see sample calculations. So there are no calculations for it. The only basic thing is that you require a specific software, and what is that one? That is an SQL database, that is MySQL, and on that MySQL we can perform these operations. What is the output or result or analysis? So there is no output as such. Output we have already given after. It is not a specific output because it is not an experiment. We are getting output after every query. After every query that has been executed, you are going to get the output. Now the list of pre-lab questions. Which DDL command is used to create table? Very simple. By create you can create the table. Which is used to delete? By using delete. Which is used to alter the structure? By using the command alter. Now after studying this, you must understand what are the different data types: char, integer, float, boolean, varchar, etc. The rows and tables, columns in a table in a database are called as tuples and attributes. To rows you called as tuples, and to column you called as attributes. And relation in a database means table. So relation means table, rows means tuples, columns means attributes. And the database that we are talking about is SQL, that is structured query language, and the commands we have studied are the commands which are called as DDL commands. DDL means data definition language commands. And what are those data definition language commands? They are create, alter, drop, truncate, rename, etc. So after this, what is the conclusion? We have understand the need, characteristics, types and use of database is studied. So that database means the DDL commands. The DDL commands, what are the DDL commands? We have studied what is the need, what is the need for those particular database commands. That is what we have studied. So in the next practical, so this is all about the second practical. So this is again a very simple practical wherein we have studied the data definition language commands in SQL. So we have studied the different DDL commands, and now next practical we are going to study the DML commands. DML means it stands for data manipulation. So in manipulation, suppose we have already stored the data, then we are going to manipulate that data. So we'll see it in the next week the lecture. Okay then, thank you class. Good.